Farmer Boy, Chapter 24, The Little Bobsled. Snow was falling the next morning when Almanzo rode with Father to the timber lot. Large feathery flakes made a veil over everything, and if you were alone and held your breath and listened, you could hear the soft, tiny sound of their falling. Father and Almanzo tramped through the falling snow in the woods, looking for straight, small oaks. When they found one, Father chopped it down. He chopped off the limbs, and Almanzo piled them up neatly. Then they loaded the small logs onto the bobsled. After that, they looked for two small crooked trees to make curved runners. They must be 5 inches through and 6 inches tall before they began to carve. It was hard to find them. In the whole timber lot, there were no 2 trees alike. "You wouldn't find any 2 alike in the whole world, son," Father said. "Not even 2 blades of grass are the same. Everything is different from everything else, if you look at it." They had to take 2 trees that were a little alike. Father chopped them down, and Almanzo helped load the bobsled. Then they drove home in time for dinner. That afternoon, Father and Almanzo made the little bobsled on the big barn floor. Father hewed the bottoms of the runners flat and smooth, clear around the crook of their turned-up front ends. Just behind the crook, he hewed a flat place on top, and he hewed another flat place near the rear ends. And then he hewed 2 beams for cross pieces. He hewed them 10 inches wide and 3 inches high and sawed them 4 feet long. They were to stand on edge. He hewed out their corners to fit over the flat places on top of the runners. Then he hewed out a curve in their underneath edges to let them slip over the high snow in the middle of the road. He laid the runners side by side, 3½ feet apart, and he fitted the crossbeams on them, but he did not fasten them together yet. He hewed out 2 slabs 6 feet long and flat on both sides. He laid them on the crossbeams over the runners. Then with an auger, he bored a hole through a slab down past the crossbeam into the runner, and he bored it close to the beam, and the auger made a half an auger hole down the side of the beam. On the other side of the beam, he bored another hole like the first. Into the holes, he drove stout wood pegs. The pegs went down through the slab and into the runner, and they fitted tightly into the half holes on both sides of the beam. 2 pegs held the slab and the beam and the runner firmly together at one corner of the sled. In the other 3 corners, he bored the holes, and Almanzo hammered in the pegs, then finished the body of the little bobsled. Now Father bored a hole crosswise in each runner, close to the front crossbeam. He hewed the bark from a slender pole and sharpened its ends so that they would go into the holes. Almanzo and Father pulled the curved ends of the runners as far apart as they could, and Father slipped the ends of the pole into the holes. When Almanzo and Father let go, the runners held the pole firmly between them. Then Father bored 2 holes in the pole close to the runners, and they were to hold the tongue sled. For the tongue, he used an elm sapling, because elm is tougher and more pliable than oak, and the sapling was 10 feet long from butt to tip. Father slipped an iron ring over the tip and hammered it down until it fitted tightly, 2½ feet from the butt, and he split the butt in 2 up to the iron ring, which he kept from splitting any further. He sharpened the split ends and spread them apart and drove them into the holes of the crosswise pole, and then he bored holes down through the pole and the 2 ends of the tongue and drove pegs into the holes. Near the tip of the tongue, he drove a spike through it, and the spike stuck out below the tongue. The tip of the tongue would go into the iron ring at the bottom of the calf's yoke, and when they backed the ring, would push against the spike, and the stiff tongue would push the sled backward. Now the bobsled was done. It was almost chore time, but Almanzo did not want to leave his little bobsled until it had a wood rack, so Father quickly bored holes down through the ends of the slabs, into the crossbeams, and into each hole Almanzo drove a stake 4 feet long. The tall stakes stood up at the corners of the sled, and they would hold the logs when he hauled the wood from the timber. The storm was rising, and the falling snow whirled, and the wind was crying with a lonely sound. Then Almanzo and Father carried the full milk pails to the house at night. Almanzo wanted deep snow so that he could begin hauling wood with his new sled, but Father listened to the storm, and he said that they could not work outdoors the next day. They would have to stay under shelter, so they might as well be threshing the wheat.